This is Priesthood Sunday here in the United States, and it's a day that we give thanks to the Lord for sharing his priesthood with us in ordained ministry. Because the Eucharist is at the center of our Catholic life, and so we can have access to the Eucharist, Jesus shared his own priesthood so that we could continue to do what he did at the Last Supper when he took bread and wine and said, "This is my body, this is my blood. Do this in memory of me." The second reading today from Paul's letter to the Thessalonians told us about the effect that Paul had on that community. They turned from idols to the living God. Paul had preached to them. Paul the apostle, Paul the priest, celebrated the Eucharist with them and ordained some of them. Some of the Thessalonians went out to other areas, to the Macedonians, to the Achaeans, and did the same thing, shared the message of Jesus Christ, and celebrated the Eucharist. And that message of Jesus Christ has come down to us today. And through the gift of his priesthood in the sacrament of holy orders, we are doing right now what Jesus did at the Last Supper. We are doing this in memory of him. We are blessed in our parish to have 3 seminarians, 3 young men who are studying and discerning their call to the priesthood of Jesus Christ. We have John Schneider, we have Lou Balzer, and we have Scott Goodfellow, who will be addressing us about his vocation after the prayer after communion. But I thought today I would share a little bit about my own calling to priesthood. Scott and Lou and John are looking forward to ordination. It's been 33 years since I have been ordained. And where did my calling come from? Well, my vocation really came from God, but he used my family as instruments of that. Now, before I say anything about my family, I want you to know that we were a normal family. I'm not proud to tell you, but I need to tell you that we sometimes scrapped as kids. We didn't always do what our mother and father asked us to do as kids. There were 5 boys and 1 girl in our family, and I am the oldest. But I want you to know that my family is probably a lot like your family. But in my family life, my parents cooperated with God in creating an environment of faith. We went to Mass every Sunday. Every Sunday. It was not an option. I didn't know any different, and I'm glad I didn't know any different. The only excuse that one could use not to go to Sunday Mass in our family was that you were very sick. And believe me, you needed to be sick enough to be in bed even after the 12 o'clock Mass was finished on Sunday. Mass was the center. My parents went to confession regularly, and whether or not we went along with them, they went and set the example. Prayer was in our family life daily. Grace at table. The family rosary every day. I grew up with that practice, and it's still a practice in my life. Night prayer. When it was time for the youngest of us to go to bed, we would all kneel on our favorite step going up to the bedroom level of the house, and we would say night prayer together, led by my mother and father. My own calling to priesthood, I believe, happened when I was about 4 or 5 years old. We moved a lot as a family, and I can associate different ages with different houses. I was about 4 or 5, and I was going to Mass with my Grandma Gert, to St. Jude's in Elyria. And I was in about the 3rd row on the main aisle. I liked to sit there so I could see. It was the offertory of the Mass, and I was watching the priest, Father McCaffrey, and I was looking at the altar, and I looked at the cross that was above the altar, and I said to myself, I could do that. I could do that. And I believe, as a 4 or 5-year-old, that's when God gave me the vocation, the calling to be a priest. There's a line in Graham Greene's novel, The Power and the Glory, that goes, "There is always one moment in childhood when the door opens and lets the future in." That was the moment when the door opened and let the future in for me. St. Jude's in Elyria outgrew their original church like we did here at St. Joseph's, and they needed to build a larger church as we did. Father Kosum, the pastor at St. Jude's in Elyria, knew the story about that cross over the altar in their original church. And when their new church was completed, he delivered that cross to me here. I had it restored, and that's the crucifix that you see in St. Joseph Hall. As you might go in today for coffee and donuts, as you go through the door, on your left-hand side, that wall where the kitchen shelf is, just beyond that is a large crucifix. It was before that crucifix that the Lord gave me my calling. When the door opened and the future came through to a 4 or 5-year-old boy. I went to the seminary after 8th grade, when I was 14. We had a high school seminary in those days called Borromeo Seminary High School. I remember the day that my parents took me there to drop me off for the first day of school, and I was nervous and already getting homesick, and I said to the Lord in my own heart, "Lord, I'll give this 1 month, and if I don't like it, I'm coming back home." Well, at the end of the month, I was pretty at home in the seminary, and that 1 month led to 12 years of seminary life. And I was ordained a priest on June 14th, 1975, with 25 of my classmates. In those 33 years of priesthood, I've been stationed many places. My original idea was to be a parish priest. That's what I always wanted to be, but God had some other ideas for a period of my life. I taught in our seminary at Borromeo Seminary College for a period of time. I did some diocesan work at St. John's Cathedral, in the liturgy office, and for 9 years I was Bishop Pilla's secretary. I was appointed to St. Joseph's in August of 1995. And now I am finally getting a chance to do full-time what I always wanted to do and always had my hand in somewhere. And I'm very, very grateful to be here at St. Joseph these 13 years as your pastor. As parents, you want your children to be successful. That's the mark of being a fine parent. But I would ask you as parents today, do you see being a priest or a deacon or a sister or a brother